Have you ever thought that perhaps you've never truly seen the world? That everything you call reality may not be what is actually in front of you, but only a reflection of what your consciousness can sustain? Every gaze is like a secret filter, shaping what reaches you. What we call colors, shapes, and sounds are not the world itself, but translations made by the brain, projections organized so that we can survive. Quantum physics suggests that matter has no defined form until it is observed. The electron does not follow a predictable path. It spreads into possibilities, like a silent chorus of futures, and only stabilizes when someone looks. This means that the very presence of the observer is not passive. It reorganizes the universe around it. You are not merely watching reality, you are building it every second. But the most disturbing detail is not this. It is realizing that perhaps what we call seeing is not perceiving, but projecting. We do not access the real as it is, only the version we are able to interpret. Looking at the world is looking into the very perceptual apparatus itself. The universe before you may be more of an invisible mirror than a transparent window. And what if the entire scene around you were not something external, waiting to be deciphered, but an intimate response, shaped by your consciousness? What if the world had never been seen directly, but only reflected through the observer? This is the secret key that has always been present, but is rarely touched. The world is not simply what you see. The world is what happens between your gaze and the abyss of possibilities that we call real. If the world is more mirror than window, we must rethink the trust we place in our senses. What you call reality is, in fact, a mosaic interpreted by the brain. The light that touches objects is not color, it is only vibration. It only becomes blue, red, or golden because your mind translates that frequency into perceptible language. The sound you hear is not sound either. It is invisible pressure waves in the air, which turn into music or voice only because your nervous system constructs that experience. Science acknowledges this paradox. Nothing we see, hear, or feel is the world itself. It is always a translation. It is like receiving letters in a foreign language and never having access to the original text, only to the versions adapted by an internal translator that never reveals itself. This means we never touch the real directly, but live surrounded by representations. The universe before us may be solid, but what we experience is only the result of an interpretative process. In ancient spirituality, this enigma was also perceived. Many traditions spoke of the world as a shared dream. Not a dream in the sense of a disposable illusion, but a living weave, sustained by the attention of those who participate. The world only gains consistency because billions of gazes keep it active. Without the gaze, it would not have the same shape. What we call reality is closer to a vibrational agreement than to an independent object. The observer is not a secondary piece, but the center of the stage. When you look, the real responds. When you withdraw, the real dissolves into probabilities. This is the essence of quantum experiments. The particle is a wave, and the wave is a particle, depending on the presence of the gaze that measures it. The universe seems to flow in two directions, as infinite possibility and as defined form. The point of transformation between these two natures is precisely the act of observing. Perhaps this explains why certain human experiences defy logic. Have you noticed how two people can be in the same place, witnessing the same event, yet describe completely different realities? For one, the environment feels suffocating, heavy. For the other, the same space can feel welcoming. It is not the world that changes, but the inner mirror that returns different versions of the same scene. The real is not fixed, it dances according to the gaze that sustains it. Neuroscience reinforces this mystery. Studies show that perception is built in layers, many of them unconscious. Before you see a chair, billions of nerve cells have already processed electrical signals, filtering, correcting, and reconstructing the image. What emerges into consciousness is only the final result of this process, an edited version of what we call the world. This editing is not neutral. It carries memories, emotions, and expectations. Looking is never an innocent act. It is always a creative act. Here begins the fissure that opens space for another understanding. The world is not seen as it is, but as you are. The gaze does not merely capture, it also colors. Sadness can tint the streets gray, even on a sunny day. Joy can transform an ordinary environment into a vibrant landscape. None of this is outside, but everything seems to be. The observer's mirror does not show itself, but projects within what we believe to be external. And the most unsettling part is that we grow up trusting our senses as if they were absolute. We were taught to believe that vision is faithful, that touch is reliable, that hearing does not lie. But each of these channels is limited and easily deceived. An optical illusion, a distorted sound, a reconstructed memory. All these phenomena reveal that perception is more a pact than a proof. The real may be much greater than what we can translate. If we accept this idea, an unexpected consequence arises. We have never seen the world in its nakedness. What we see is always the clothing that the gaze chooses to dress it in. The horizon we call landscape is, in fact, a reflection stitched by consciousness. The universe may be before us in silence, but what we perceive is always the response we give to it. The observer's secret is this: we are not merely witnesses of the real, we are co-authors of it. At every second, the world presents itself not as a fixed stage, but as a mirror that returns the form of the one who contemplates it. What we call reality may not be something external waiting for our eyes, but a living flow that only stabilizes because we are looking. If accepting that you have never seen the world directly is already disturbing, even more unsettling is realizing that reality itself may be shaped by the way you choose to look at it. Quantum science suggests that matter does not organize itself on its own, but responds to a focus of attention. Spirituality has always hinted at the same. Human vision is not only receptive, it is also creative. But how can this be translated into an image capable of crossing reason? Think of a deep, untouched lake. It is invisible until something touches its surface. It could be the wind, a stone, or simply the weight of the night. The reflection that appears is not the lake itself, but the lake's response to the touch it received. Reality works in this way. We do not see the lake. We see its surface vibrating according to the gaze that leans over it. Each thought, each expectation, each emotion is like the stone that alters the clarity of the water. This metaphor brings us closer to a revelation. The world is not static, it is responsive. It is not just before us, but reacts to the energy we bring to it. Physicist David Bohm described the universe as an indivisible whole, where consciousness and matter are intertwined. In this setting, looking is not a neutral act, but a subtle intervention in the fabric of the real. What we call experience is not an outside photograph, but a dance in which subject and object co-create. In everyday practice, this manifests in simple and almost invisible ways. Have you noticed how a gaze loaded with distrust can instantly change the atmosphere of a meeting? Or how loving attention can make someone more confident, as if they had been given permission to be? It was not the space that changed, but the inner mirror projecting a new form onto the surface of the common lake. Mystical traditions understood this mystery through symbols. For the Hermeticists, the universe was compared to a living skin that responded to human touch. For the Sufis, creation was described as music that only exists because someone dares to listen to it. The real is not a passive object, but a partner in dialogue. It is as if the cosmos were constantly waiting to be seen in order to decide which face to offer. This idea, though poetic, has support in the scientific field. In the famous double-slit experiment, particles of light behave like waves until they are measured. At the moment someone observes, they collapse into defined trajectories. Without observation, they are pure indeterminacy. With observation, they become form. This boundary reveals something profound. The act of looking not only reveals the world, but creates it. Now try to bring this into your practical life. Remember a place you often visit, your home, your street, your workplace. They seem immobile, permanent. But have you noticed how they change their face depending on your inner state? A room can feel suffocating on days of anguish and yet welcoming on nights of serenity. The setting did not transform on its own, but responded to what was projected onto it. It is at this point that the concept of the observer's mirror takes shape. The universe returns the energy that touches it. like the lake that reflects only what its surface receives. It is not about believing that everything is the product of fantasy, but about recognizing that our perception is inseparable from the object perceived. We do not see the pure world, we see the dialogue between the world and what we bring to it. If we accept this, a paradox opens. There is no isolated observer. With every gaze, we intertwine with what we see. When you fix your eyes on a tree, you do not see only the tree. You also see the memory of the trees you have known, the affection you carry for nature, the quality of the attention you project at that moment. The real is always entanglement, never an isolated piece. And it is precisely in this entanglement that the secret dwells. Perhaps we are not creatures inhabiting an external world, but consciousnesses stitching together a fabric of shared reality. Each gaze is a stitch in this fabric. Remove the gaze, and the fabric unravels into possibilities. Add attention and the fabric thickens, creating texture. The world has never been a fixed painting. It has always been movement responding to the observer. This perception may seem uncomfortable, but it opens an unprecedented freedom. If the world reflects, then its form is not completely beyond your reach. You do not control the real in its totality, but you influence the way it presents itself. The question then is not what is the world, but what am I offering it so that it may return to me? Up to this point, everything seems to indicate that we are co-authors of a shared scene, that the world responds to the shape of our gaze. But the true shock is not merely realizing this influence. What deeply destabilizes is accepting that perhaps there has never been an outside world independent of the observer. What we call reality may be nothing more than a relational weave. There is no scene without a witness, nor witness without a scene. Quantum physics had already hinted at this impossibility of separating object and subject. Schrödinger's paradox, with its cat both alive and dead at the same time, is not an academic riddle but a mirror of this very question. The state of the cat is not defined until someone observes. But notice the detail. It is not that the cat is hiding its real condition. It is that this condition only exists in the act of being observed. This changes everything. Until now you believed you perceived the world as it is. But what if it's the opposite? What if the world only exists because you perceive it? What we call outside may be inseparable from the inside. That clear boundary between subject and object begins to crack. The universe would not be a stage, but a partnership. Not a finished play, but a dialogue that only happens in the encounter. This type of revelation always appears as rupture. It is like walking through a corridor believing that at the end there is a solid wall, and suddenly discovering that the wall is a door, and that it only opens because you arrived before it. What you called real may be less solid than you thought. It is as if the ground were built under your feet at the very moment you step. This idea may seem threatening. After all, we grew up supported by the promise of stability. The world is there, firm, waiting to be seen. Removing this foundation sounds like falling into emptiness. But perhaps this emptiness is not a fall, but possibility. If the world is made in the encounter, each gaze is a chance to inaugurate reality. You're not trapped in a defined scene, but participating in a living construction. And there is an even more radical consequence. If everything you see is already colored by your emotions, beliefs, and memories, have you ever truly looked at something without filters? Have you ever seen the real in its nakedness? Or have you always seen the reflection of yourself projected onto the fabric you call the world? This question does not ask for an immediate answer. It asks for silence, for an inner space capable of sustaining vertigo. In many spiritual traditions, this was the turning point. Mystics did not simply seek to understand the universe, but to quiet the filter, suspend projection, rest the mind. What they reported after this state was always the same. The world was no longer a scene, but a living presence. It was no longer something before them, but something that surrounded them and constituted them. In that instant, the separation between observer and observed disappeared. And what if the true secret were this? Not merely accepting that your vision influences the world, but that the world itself only exists in the act of being seen. This idea displaces everything. What we call reality is not a neutral landscape, but a current of encounters. The universe is not happening out there. It is happening between you and it, in that subtle interval where gaze and presence touch. This is the moment when the mind tries to resist, searching for an anchor, a certainty that restores stability. But perhaps true freedom lies in not needing that anchor, in accepting that the ground is recreated with each step, that life is not a finished thing, but a living mirror of the consciousness that sustains it. Now I want you to do something simple. If this shift touched something in you, record it. Like this video, so that this reflection can reach more people, and write in the comments the phrase, "I have never truly seen the world." This phrase is not just symbolic participation, it is a declaration of rupture, a reminder that you have accepted to look beyond the obvious. This perception that we have never seen the world in its pure form demands more than reasoning. It calls for image, narrative, body. That is why so many traditions transmitted this mystery, not through rational treatises, but through stories. There is something the mind cannot reach, but the heart immediately recognizes when the metaphor takes shape. It is told in ancient manuscripts about a traveler who crossed endless deserts in search of a city of gold. He believed that there he would find ultimate truth, a place where all answers would be revealed without shadows. He journeyed for years, crossing sands and cold nights, sustained by the conviction that the city was real and concrete. One day, upon glimpsing a mirage on the horizon, he believed he had finally arrived. But as he approached, he realized the city was disappearing before his eyes. Desolate, he fell to his knees in the sand and understood. There was no city at all. There was only the horizon responding to his desire. In that instant, the traveler stopped searching outside. He turned his eyes inward and discovered that the city had been projected by his gaze from the beginning. The gold was not metal hidden in the desert. It was the reflection of consciousness itself seeking meaning. What appeared before him had never been a fixed place, but a mirror of his quest. This legend survived not as a geographical account, but as a spiritual map. The world we see is always a mirage shaped by the intensity of the gaze. This story, although ancient, touches something we still recognize today. Who has not pursued a promise of happiness on the horizon, whether a job, a love, a material achievement, only to discover that, upon reaching it, the shine had already shifted elsewhere? It is not that the object lied, it is that what we sought was not in it, but in the reflection our gaze projected upon it. The horizon stays alive only because it is never reached. This dynamic can be painful, but also liberating. Painful because it reveals the fragility of our certainties. Liberating because it shows that we have never been trapped in a definitive scene. Reality behaves like the desert in the story, apparently rigid, yet always malleable before the gaze that sustains it. It is not about denying the concreteness of life, but about recognizing that this concreteness is inseparable from the way consciousness touches it. Other traditions told the same truth through different characters. Among the Norse peoples, for example, there were stories of warriors who faced enemies only to discover that the true adversary was within themselves. The external battles were reflections of internal battles. The shield they held in their hands was not only to block spears, but also to reveal what they had not yet recognized in themselves. The fight was never only against the world, but against the reflection the world returned. This perspective can completely transform the way we face life's events. The conflict at work, the difficult relationship, the feeling of emptiness, all of this can be read not only as external events, but as mirrors that return aspects of ourselves not yet recognized. It does not mean that everything is illusion without value, but that each situation carries within it a message about the quality of our gaze. The traveler who sought the city of gold did not fail by not finding it. On the contrary, his greatest discovery was realizing it had never been in a fixed place. The gold was always himself, his own attention condensed into form. By giving up the external search, he gained access to something no mirage could ever offer, the understanding that the real is not a destination, but a relationship. If the world is this mirror, the question ceases to be what is happening outside of me and becomes what is being reflected of me. Life takes on a different texture, when we stop seeing events only as isolated facts and begin to perceive them as coded messages of consciousness. The drama, the joy, the emptiness, and the encounter all are ways in which the lake responds to the stone we cast into it. In this sense, the myth, the symbolic story, or the archetypal scene are not mere fables. They function as keys. They show what the rational mind cannot sustain on its own, that we have never seen the world bare, only the mirages, the cities of gold, the projected adversaries. All this is true insofar as it reveals something about the one who looks. If the traveler's story revealed that the city of gold was always tied to the gaze, now it is time to transform this knowledge into experience, because understanding with the mind still keeps the revelation distant. What truly shifts is feeling in the body that the world is never external, but a living response. Close your eyes for a moment. Take a deep breath, letting the air expand your chest. Notice the contact of your body with the space. The air that enters is not outside and then inside. It is the same flowing between you and the environment, without a clear boundary. By recognizing this movement, notice that the limit between internal and external begins to dissolve. The body is not an island, it is a bridge. Now direct your attention to sound. There may be distant noises, or perhaps only relative silence. Listen without trying to identify, without naming. Simply perceive how the sound is neither out there nor in here. It only exists at the point where your consciousness touches it. Between vibration and listening, something happens. It is in this happening that the real manifests. Slowly open your eyes and choose a simple object in front of you. It could be a wall, a chair, anything ordinary. Look without hurry, as if it were the first time. Notice the colors, the lines, the details. Now ask yourself, am I seeing the chair as it is, or am I seeing its response to my gaze? Notice the difference. The object is not still, it vibrates according to the state in which you observe it. If your mind is agitated, the chair may seem only banal. If it is calm, it may reveal itself almost luminous, with a silent presence that was not noticed before. This shows that it is not the object that changes on its own, but the observer's mirror that offers it different forms. What you see is inseparable from what you are at the moment of looking. Now expand this exercise. Think of a recent memory that carried strong emotion. Bring the scene into consciousness and notice how it still lives within you. Feel that you are not simply revisiting something that happened, but recreating the event from your current state. Memory is not a still photograph. It is an active mirror that returns new nuances each time it is contemplated. You do not relive the past. You recreate it through today's gaze. Breathe again. Feel that each inhalation is the world entering you, and each exhalation is you entering the world. There is no separation. This perception can be expanded to every daily gesture. Looking at the sky, touching a surface, meeting another person. In all of this, the real is built in interaction, never in isolation. To go deeper, try a small ritual. In front of a physical mirror, look at yourself without seeking to judge. Just see. At first, strangeness or discomfort may arise, but persist. Soon you will realize that you are not seeing just a face, but a set of memories, expectations, and projected feelings. The mirror does not show who you are, it shows how you see yourself. This same mechanism extends to the entire world. Every experience is a reflection of the way you contemplate it. This exercise can radically transform the way you walk through life. By understanding that looking is a creative act, you gain responsibility and freedom. The responsibility of recognizing that the world is never neutral before your gaze. The freedom of realizing that you can offer another quality of presence, and by doing so, open space for the world to return another face. It is not about manipulating reality as if it were a toy, but about realizing that each internal state is a seed that reverberates in the external fabric. When you look with fear, the world responds with threatening faces. When you look with openness, the world returns softer contours. The real is not a fixed given, it is constant dialogue. Allow yourself to experience this not only as concept, but as daily practice. Choose simple moments, walking on the street, waiting in line, preparing a meal, and use them as a perception laboratory. Ask yourself, am I seeing the world itself or its response to my gaze? This question opens a crack, a pause that reveals the secret. We have never seen the pure world, only the dance between what we are and what we call reality. By realizing that each gaze is creation, something opens in silence within you. The world ceases to be a fixed scene and reveals itself as a living current, responding to each breath, to each gesture of attention. What seemed solid shows itself to be malleable. What seemed external reveals itself inseparable from the one who observes. And perhaps this is the secret that so many traditions tried to guard in symbols. We have never seen the world bare, but only the dance between consciousness and matter. Reality is not a static thing waiting for our eyes. It is dialogue. It is encounter. It is reflection that returns the tone of the presence that sustains it. This understanding does not ask for haste. It asks for contemplation. Remain for a moment, feeling the texture of the real around you, as if each object, each sound, each sensation were a response to something deep within you. Let the mind rest from the need for conclusions and allow life to reveal itself as a mirror in motion. Do not conclude, breathe. The real is approaching. Not every answer comes as a voice. Some arrive as vibration. If you have walked with me until here, I want you to write in the comments, "The real is encounter." That way I will know you remained until the end of this journey. And if this content touched something essential within you, subscribe to the channel and activate your presence here. There is much more to be unfolded in this dialogue between science, spirituality, and consciousness. The next step will not be explanation, it will be creation.